What's good? It's Woog. Man, this is not good news. Mike Tyson reportedly, and on video, it certainly appears that way. Started punching somebody on an airplane who was really harassing him. The way that it's reported, at least through TMZ, is that Mike Tyson had taken a picture with a passenger on the plane, and then the passenger sitting behind, was sitting behind him and was just constantly just talking and talking. And Mike Tyson asked him to calm down a few times, and the person just kept going. And at a certain point, Mike Tyson just started, taking off on him, throwing what looked like very short punches. They weren't like rare back and fire punches necessarily, but punches are punches. And I guess he bloodied the passenger up, so I'm sure there are going to be some pretty severe legal ramifications. Hopefully no criminal charges or anything like that. But man, this is a setback. Tyson has pretty much been a relatively open book in recent years since he's been, making a comeback after his, descent in the early to mid 90s and the late 90s. He's pretty much been on a comeback ever since that cameo on the movie The Hangover, where you've seen great successes in Mike Tyson's business career and his life. He's had all kinds of therapy documented, between the toad, the ayahuasca, and he's really been an advocate for that. He's been a weed advocate as well. He's got Tyson's Ranch. He has a successful podcast, that Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson, great show. And he's just made leaps and bounds to where he's pretty much become one of the most beloved figures for a totally different set of reasons in modern years than he was in his fight career, in his prime. He has become not only an ambassador of the sport, but again, an advocate for, mental health therapy. And he's really just been a pretty genuine figure. So to see this type of a setback is very unfortunate. And it's like, damn, how unaware do you have to be to piss Mike Tyson off on an airplane to the point where he wants to punch you out? And, you're going to see a lot of, I'm sure, humorous, comedic style headlines because, this is Mike Tyson who, bit Evander Holyfield's ear and has had, multiple, pretty violent, transgressions. Even in jail, he was getting additional time, or there were reports of him while he was locked up in the early to mid 90s and even after the mid 90s where he was getting into physical confrontations in prison, So Mike Tyson is no stranger to, we'll say, impromptu altercations, but it's not a case of, Mike Tyson going crazy. Remember the Chris Rock joke? That tiger didn't go crazy. That tiger went tiger. Well, Tyson kind of went Tyson here, right? But I don't want this momentary setback to then redefine how he should be perceived. This was definitely something that was ill-advised, and you just can't be doing that. There is really no excuse for it. There are some tremendously annoying people out there in the world, and people have no sense of boundaries, and some people just lack any sort of self-awareness or social skills to be able to gauge the temperature and really see when they're being that annoying to where somebody would want to hit them. But again, that's really no excuse. And it's pretty amazing, or at least interesting, that just several weeks ago, Mike Tyson was in a situation where he was in a comedy club or something, and there was a patron or somebody who was in the club who was just being very aggressive in their, engagement with Mike Tyson. And he was just kind of sitting back, super cool. And then one of the bouncers tried to escort the belligerent guy out of there. And then the guy pulled out a gun. Tyson didn't even flinch. He didn't blink, none of that. He just sat there calmly while the guy pulled out a gun, a guy who was clearly prideful, apparently drunk, just belligerent and, suspect. And just basically he had all the ingredients on this is how people get shot in the streets. It's usually pride, whether it's a situation about a girl or money, gang activity. That's how Tupac got shot. It was gang related in a way, but it was pride related just as much. That's how Nipsey Hussle got shot out here in the LA area. So the fact that Mike Tyson was in a situation where somebody who was clearly bothered and clearly prideful and wasn't going to take an L, because that's why people get shot, because other people aren't willing to take an L, Tyson didn't even flinch, yet on an airplane, he gets annoyed by another passenger to the point where he just starts letting his hands go. I mean, you thought the stock market was volatile, but I hope, again, that this is just a momentary lapse and not a growing trend in terms of any sort of a emotional or mental health regression. You know what I mean? I hope Mike Tyson is able to just get right back on the path that he had seemingly been in for the past, decade or so. And this is more so just a one-off. A really bad one-off, but a one-off, I hope. But yeah, let me know what you think about this recent news. We'll see what kind of legal proceedings this leads to. And I hope for Mike Tyson's sake that it's just civil and not criminal. But I would be curious as to how that conversation went down and how much Tyson was being annoyed or bothered on that airplane before he started getting violent. Because I just don't see how you could reasonably spiral into a path where you end up punching out a passenger. I mean, there are ways that could develop. I just don't see how another passenger who knows who Mike Tyson is and is wanting to talk to him too much, take pictures, or however he's expressing his excitement or whatever he was expressing, how that could lead to getting beaten up. I'm just very curious as to how that unfolded. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk, even though this wasn't, the normal fight talk that we're used to. But also, one other note, they say you are not defined by your worst moments or actions. That's only partially true. I don't totally buy that. I think a lot of that is a lot of, helpful and healthy self-talk. But in reality, you kind of are, depending on what those moments or actions are. I mean, just ask Harvey Weinstein or O.J. Simpson. You know what I mean? You can potentially largely be defined by your worst moments or actions. So just keep that in mind as you go out there and act. You feel me? But, just reputation-wise, it's unfortunate that Tyson is taking this step back because it's almost one of those things where you could be good for 95% of the time. Like think about the reputation of a pit bull style dog, right? It's she's so friendly and, she's great around the kids and it only takes one snap and then, yeah, it's a pit bull. You know what I mean? So reputation-wise, some things are just hard to shake. So I hope Tyson doesn't get discouraged to where this turns into, again, another type of unraveling, and that you could put this into context and then move forward with the best of intentions and actions. But don't get it twisted. You can be defined by some of your worst actions. But yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks again for tuning in.